Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to get back into the more informational videos about me before I move on to the teaching video, so you can get to know who I am before I actually move on to that. So first of all, forgive I don't have an iron and most of my clothes are in suitcases that you might have seen in another video, so yeah, so just don't look there. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about today is studying in Spain, and I'm going to start off by schooling. So primary and secondary school before moving on to university, which I'll do in another video. So I moved to Spain when I was 10, and at that time I was in, I think it was year 5 or 6 in England, which when I came here I moved in August and the school year starts in September, and it was year 5, so I started year 5 in the Spanish system. I lived in a very small village here in Spain called Benidimla, and it had around, I think it still has around 500 inhabitants, which is not a lot. So the school was very small, but that helped me so much. So obviously I'd been doing good in school in England, but here in Spain it's totally different. You have all the typical subjects. There's naturales, which is about like the environment, history, geography, English, and then the Spanish classes as well, and then typical gym class, plástica, which is like art, and that's the main ones I can think of. So obviously English went great for me. The other subjects really depended on the teacher as well. So this is the first school I went to here in Spain, and I did 2 years there. So I did year 5 and year 6. As it was such a small school in such a small village, there was around 15 students in the whole school. So counting from like 3-4 years old up until 14, I think it is, when you leave that school. Actually 12. So it's a big difference. And for the last year, I was the only person in my year. So what they had to do was join up 3 or 4 different year groups together. So it was me, which I was 12 in that last year, with students which were 11, 10 and 9. And maybe 8, I don't really remember. But yeah, it was very strange, but for me it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because with it being so small, first of all, you make friends much easier and you can listen to them and learn from them easier, like the language. And the teachers obviously gave you more of a one-on-one teaching. Nowadays, I know it's very different, and maybe if you came to study here in Spain now, it would be a bit more difficult than it was for me. I have to say that I didn't know a lot of Spanish, and also where I moved, they didn't even speak Spanish, they spoke Valencian, so I had no clue what that was. I just didn't know anything. And as I've mentioned before, obviously my friends laughed at me at first because I just didn't understand them, I just couldn't speak to them. But with it being such a small school, I was able to learn quite fast. Okay, so subjects in general were pretty fine. I understood mostly from pictures in the books, and I have not a massive photographic memory, but enough for me to get through exams, so that did help me as well while I was studying. But the small school really did help, and it just really wasn't that difficult for me. I remember spending, for example, one whole night learning how to roll my R's. Didn't know how to do that, and obviously being surrounded with people that did, it made me want to do that more. And also the village in itself, I'll talk about this another time, but had a lot of English people, so that helped me as well to integrate a bit easier. So them 2 years were fine. I got through them pretty well. Obviously my results weren't perfect, but they weren't actually bad. I didn't fail anything. And obviously being the first 2 years in Spain, that was quite a miracle, but it was all thanks to the one-on-one teaching that I had from teachers, the help I got from my friends, and I also went to extra Spanish classes with a girl from the village, and she really did help me out a lot. I think I went maybe twice a week, I don't really remember. But she helped me with my, not with my homework, but with the language itself. Anyway, then the next 2 years I spent in another school, which basically, because the villages are so small, you have to go moving from village to village to finish your studies. So I did 2 years in Benidorm, then I moved another 2 years to Orba school. Orba was like a middle school. It obviously had much more people, a lot of people that I didn't know, and obviously a higher level of what they were asking for from students, which obviously for me was a bit scary because I just didn't know the language still fully. Anyway, I did make friends, which was great. I made friends pretty fast. There was a group of English girls that I went with a lot, and also the Spanish people from my class. And all in all, it was fine. Then I was learning the language much faster. Apart from going to the Spanish classes in my village, I started going to repaso classes, and they were like reinforcement classes, so they helped me do homework, and I went with people from my class, so it was really fun as well. I went to that, and also, sorry, you get optional classes to do apart from your normal obligatory classes. And so I had friends that were choosing to do French, they were choosing to do loads of different things. In that case, I thought the easiest thing to do and the best thing for me was to do a Spanish reinforcement class, and there was other English people in that school as well, so also we were all together. And so I went to extra Spanish classes too. Again, the subjects weren't that difficult. There were some different ones that some I had to study for a bit more for. I did have a lot of help from the reinforcement classes, like the homework classes I went to. But yeah, in general, it all went well. And then the last place that I went to finish my schooling was Pago. And Pago was a much bigger school in general. It was a high school. Okay, so this jump from the primary middle school to the high school was probably the biggest and the scariest. Now, these 2 years, there was 2 years in pre-high school and then 2 years in the highest school, but it was the same place, if you get me. These were probably the hardest for me ever. So obviously subjects were getting harder and harder. We started to have like chemistry, we had more advanced maths and different things like that. And for the first 2 years that I was in Pego, I had to also go to reinforcement classes, but inside the school. So what they did was they separated the Spanish and Valencian classes into beginner level and higher level, and I was obviously put into beginner level in both. And actually my teachers just did not trust in me to pass. Basically, they just really didn't think I was going to go anywhere. Aww. Which made me much more determined to do it, and I think that's what got me through it. There was obviously this beginner class was a bit more full of the people that didn't really want to study, or those that obviously just didn't know the language like me. So it was a bit of a mixed level. It was strange, but it did help me to pass them subjects which probably in the higher level I wouldn't have done. But the exams were all the same, they just prepared you in a different way. These years, obviously even gym class was getting harder. I just did not like it. I wasn't a fan of many of the subjects in this high school or a lot of the people, to be honest. It was a very strange time for me, getting used to being around so many people and feeling judged for how I spoke or for the results that I was getting in the classes, if you understand. But it also made me more determined. So that was the first 2 years in that school. After the year, I did get used to it. I got made much more friends from that area, which are now my bestest friends. My group of girl friends I made in them 2 years, so I'm really happy for that. But yeah, it just took me a little bit of time to adjust. And then finally was the last 2 years of high school, which are the 2 years which determine where you're going to be going in university, basically. Like the results that you get and the A-level exams that you do at the end of the 2 years determine where you're going to be going, or the results that you have to get into university. So it was a really serious part of my studies, which made it for me a bit more stressful, if you understand it. I wasn't really a person that could start studying 2 weeks before an exam, so at parts I thought, oh god, I'm just never going to do this, but at the time I just really tried. In these 2 years you also get to choose whether you want to go down a more scientific route or a more like language route. I chose the language route, and this way I did like Latin and Greek, which I loved. I did art history, which I also really liked, and universal literature, which I also loved. So you're little by little starting to choose what you're going to be doing in the future, which for me was much easier, because if I had to choose like economy, maths, I wouldn't have gone anywhere in life. But yeah, that did help me a lot. The only subject that I just couldn't get my head around, it was so hard for me to study, was history, and I ended up flunking my last year of history, but they allowed me to go through to my end exams, and obviously in that exam you do not have to do, or you do have to do history, but I did pass that part of the exam, so that was all fine. So yeah, I'll talk more about university and getting into it in another video, but in general it was just the difference between these three different schools, which I spent 8 of my years studying in before I moved on to university. So yeah, it was from a small school to a middle school to a high school, all the differences. I just experienced it all. I experienced the good times and the bad times, and I guess it made me who I am today. There was times I just didn't really like school, I didn't like some of the people, but you just have to get through it, and it's difficult, it's hard, but with the help of everyone around you, it's very possible. Sorry, I'm stroking my dog, you can't see her. And so yeah, that was how I got through the school years basically in Spain. It's much easier if you're in like a smaller community, because you get a lot more one-on-one help, and extra classes really help you to pass the exams and to get every year. Because here in Spain, I don't know if it happens in other countries, but if you fail a certain amount of classes, you don't just repeat them classes, you repeat the whole year, so you go back a year. So it can be a time in higher education that you're with people that are 2 years older than you, because they have failed so many years, if you understand. So yeah, that is what happened to me basically. I'm really lucky. I feel really lucky to be to have had all that help, because I am one of the very few people, English people that studied around me, similar to me, that actually went on to go to university and pass those exams. To be honest, I only know me and one more person, and all of the rest of them decided to do A-levels in English or move away or get a job and don't do university. So I feel really proud that I did that. It was very hard, but I got through it, and yeah. So in the next video, hopefully I will be telling you about university in Spain. See you then.